Um, First of all, I'm going to start with the universe. When we look for life out there, what do we look for? We look for water. Why water? Because water is the home of proteins. And that's what I'm going to talk about today is proteins. They all exist in water, and proteins are the basis for life. And let me just check. Do we have slides? Do we have slides? Presentation slides? No. Okay. I'll just press on. um, so if we think of proteins as the basis of life, you could think of a tree, and at the root are all of the proteins. They're enzymes. They're most of your hormones. They are most of your tissues made of proteins. They catalyze reactions. They signal. They store. And then from all of those proteins, and they estimate there's about 1 million different types of proteins in a human, we grow everything else in the top of the tree, and that is your respiration, your detox, your digestion, everything your body does, everything it's made of, your energy levels, your brain function, all of that is the protein, the result of protein functions. So they're doing everything from your immune system to the blink of an eye. And so if we go from there into the where they come from, we can start at the DNA. The purpose of the DNA is to be the blueprint for the protein. So that's why we have DNA. We care a lot about it, but remember, it's only for coding into the proteins through a bunch of cellular machinery that goes through transcriptions and translations and so on, and ends up with the chain of amino acids. And those amino acids have to fold into complex 3D shapes. And there can be anything from 2, a small peptide, up to a huge number, tens of thousands in the protein titin. And so the number of amino acids in the chain can be huge, and they all have to tangle around and connect to itself in a way that comes up with the perfect shape. And that shape determines the function of the protein. And how does it get from a string of amino acids into a complex 3D shape? It needs some kind of energy for that. And it gets that energy from the water. That's why proteins need the water. And this is a transfer of entropy. It's a transfer of random to order. The water is ordered, and when it transfers to the protein becomes more ordered, and the water more random. Your body naturally creates that order in the water. It does it with a specific reactive oxygen species all the time. The technology I'm going to talk about today is mimicking that process. It's using exactly the signal that's used by the body to create that order in the cellular water. And it's done artificially in this case by a machine. I'm going to just, try to show it's about a foot square. It's got bubbling water on top to create humidity, and it's transferred from the device to the body across that humid airflow. It has to connect to the mucous membrane. Water to water, it won't go through the skin. And so what that is doing is it's creating this ordered water droplet. The shell of the droplet is highly ordered. That transfers into the cell. And that, I might be able to show you what this looks like. And I do want to show you just a couple results if we can get them, but I'll just press ahead without them for now. And so that's basically how it works. Now, this is complicated, and I won't get into any detail, of course. The other factor here is that we're constantly bombarded with free radicals. Just simply breathing is going to cause oxidation. So we either have oxidation or we're dead. And then our lifestyle choices can make it even worse. Everything we breathe in, put on our skin, what we eat, what we're exposed to can definitely make that oxidative stress worse. And so when that happens, there's a reduction. The proteins aren't working as well. And we notice that as a loss of performance, as aging, and ultimately as disease or chronic disease. So those are that sort of downhill slide. What I want to introduce right now is this solution. It's called NanoVi, and it's a unique technology that works by transferring this ordered state of water to the body and augmenting what it does. And the results from that are measurable and visible. They depend on a person's condition, how obvious they are. If somebody's in a poor condition and they're older or ill, or they're rather tuned in, then it's easier to notice. But most people will notice often mental clarity and energy levels. Those are the two biggest things that healthy people notice, and then athletes can easily recognize faster repair and regeneration. So those are the factors that come into play. Now, because we work through the cellular water, it's very simple. We're not overriding anything in the body. It's all the body's own wisdom, and it's a system-wide approach. So that means that there's none of those risk of side effects that you can see with pharmaceuticals. And so I'm going to run through here quickly. That's the tree of life. You missed it, but it was great. And this is, I do want to show this slide. That's a 3D model of a protein. You can see the alpha helix are the spirals, and the beta pleated sheets are the flat parts. And those, if a protein misfolds, become tau tangles and amyloid plaques and things like that. So that's where we get to that degenerative disease state that I mentioned earlier. I already spoke about the water, and I spoke about oxidative stress. I hope I didn't miss anything. I should mention that the proteins are handy for damage, and I didn't mention there's 5 to 10,000 or more proteins in each cell. And we have 35 trillion cells or so. So you can imagine there's a lot of proteins in there, and they're very handy for an oxidative damage. Any free radical is likely to hit a protein. It'll hit anything in the cell, of course. And so that's what the device looks like. I'll pause here for a second. This mentions that it prevents damage and initiates repair, and that's where studies have shown that it both prevents and repairs, and most likely it prevents the damage by creating more stability in the proteins so they don't misfold or unfold in the first place. So this is what I'm glad I have the slides for. This is a large study done on multiple proteins with 3 different types of damage. And they tested before and after damage, trying to evaluate whether NanoVi has a significant difference or not. And one type was oxidation, the other 2 were heat and then denatured by chemicals. And all 3 of them showed pretty remarkable improvement in the proteins that were treated with the active device instead of the sham device. So on this slide down below, you see 3 controls. The red is an undamaged or a damaged control, and then treatment before and after with a sham device. Up top, you can see the NanoVi active device, and the green line is showing when the proteins were treated after damage, and it's about 3 times as many viable proteins as the damaged control. And then the purple line is showing pre-treatment, and that's what suggests it both prevents and repairs damage. It's helpful either way. And so I'm going to use that as one example of the studies. There's been DNA damage studies looking at lactate, looking at immune response and a faster acute response for the immune system, not the chronic inflammation. And then lots with heart rate variability, showing the balance in the system, which I think is interesting because it relates to the more spiritual side of things. Rebalancing the physical system, helping people come mentally and physically a little more centered, is a benefit for the spiritual and emotional side of things. And so this next slide relates to us in the room. This only applies to people that think. And this is a healthy brain. It's actually a neuropsychologist is the scan, and it shows, the red shows inappropriate brain activity. And that was a 15-minute session to reduce that inappropriate brain fry in just 15 minutes. So that's the kind of, that's why people notice more clarity. And it's been really great for brain fog and some of these issues that people have suffered with. So I'm going to wrap up. We've got one of our biohackers here, Dave Asprey's been a big fan of ours for the last 6 years. He's used the NanoVi. And it's used sort of in the biohacking world. It's also used in conventional medicine or non-conventional integrative medicine or functional medicine. And then it's used individually very often by people looking for mental or physical performance, or a lot by athletes wanting to recover faster. And then the first 6 years of our company's history was all chronic illness. And so we have a lot of experience with chronic illnesses. We don't study diseases. We're a class 1 medical device in Europe and the US. And so we study underlying issues, not diseases directly. So happy to answer any questions, and thank you. I so appreciate being included.